talk to you this morning about weary Christians. Weary Christians. Jesus at one point says, "Come to me," in Matthew 11 and verse 28. It says, "Come to me, all you who are weary and burdened, and I will give you rest. Take my yoke upon you and learn from me, for I am gentle and humble in heart, and you will find rest for your souls, for my yoke is easy and my burden is light." Now, has anybody else thought about the weirdness of that? I want to read it again. "Come to me, all you who are weary and burdened, and I will give you rest." And the very next line, he says, "Take my yoke upon you and learn from me." Do you know what a yoke is? A yoke is a device that goes around the head onto the shoulders of the oxen for the oxen to pull a plow or a load or a something or whatever. So he says, all of you who are weary and tired, come, roll your sleeves up, put your gloves on, and learn of me. But then he goes on, he says, "For my yoke, my burden, my yoke, my task is easy, and my burden light." He said, because if you'll just learn, for my yoke is easy, my burden is light. Now, the word easy does not mean no struggle. The word in the Greek easy means well-fitting. A yoke that does not chafe or rough up or cause pressure points. It fits perfectly. It fits well. It's easy. It does not chafe when you pull against it. And my burden is light. So God says, if you're weary, come and work for me. Instead of, you see, the problem is for many of us, we're trying to get God to work for us instead of us working for God. Now, the problem with that is when we're trying to get God to work for us, we're the ones with the rein, and He's the one in the yoke. Well, back then, they didn't have reins. You got to remember, they just had the yoke on the oxen, and then you literally walked behind it. You had no reins. You just spoke orders, or you had a stick. You would reach out and tap them or poke them one way or the other. As a matter of fact, a lot of times plowing was a matter of two people. You had one person leading the oxen, the other person back there with the plow. And so as we look at that, we've got it backwards. Instead of us trying to get God to work for us, you got to learn how to work for God. And the way you work for God is you simply accept what He puts upon you. You accept the task that He places before you. And the problem is we tend to take upon ourselves tasks that God never intended for us to take upon ourselves. You see, the thing about Him being in charge and you working for Him is He calls the shots. So He says, go over here. Go over there. Go over here. You go over there. Now, I know that most of you are wonderfully compliant people. You've always been raised. You've been one of those children who just never caused your parents a problem. You just always did anything they asked you to do. And for some of you, like my wife, that's true. For some of us, not so much. Not so much. Some of us kind of have a nature like, you tell me to do something and I'm going to do anything but that. Now, you ask me to do something, that might be different. But if you tell me, we may have a problem. I'll give you anything, but try to take it. We got a problem. And so we have the stubbornness in us. So many times we are fighting against the burden that God has placed upon us. And it's not that the burden is too difficult. It's that we won't go along with what He has planned. We're constantly trying to. Have you ever walked a big dog who doesn't want to go where you want him to go? It's exhausting. I mean, I look at some people and I go, who's walking who? I don't think they're walking the dog. I think the dog is just dragging them wherever he wants to go. I see some of these little kids in our neighborhood, they've been evidently given the task of walking the dog. They're supposed to be on a leash. Most of them aren't, but they're supposed to be. And you see some of these kids and they're just trying to keep from being dragged across the ground is basically all that's happening. But that's how we live our life. At the beginning of the service, I ask you a question. What do you want to happen in this service? What is the objective of our worship, our time together here? If it's about worshiping Him, if it's about coming together and praising Him, then we can do that, and no one can stop us from doing that. Nothing can stop us from doing that if that's our objective. But when we got all of our own objectives and what we desire and what we want, you may or may not get what you come for. What about this next year? What are you expecting? What have you got planned? What do you anticipate to happen? What is going to happen in 2015? For many of us, that's a big question. We're already looking forward. We're already thinking, what are we going to, what's going to happen this year? What's going to come down the pike? What are we going to have to do? What are we going to have to face? And what are we going to have to deal with? And how are we going to accomplish this? Or how are we going to accomplish that? And we already got our wheels turning, and we kind of gotten through the Christmas season and the New Year's season, and now, the plans are out there, and we're headed down that path, and we're working hard. For some of us, maybe the years have gotten us a little bit weary, and even as Christians, we're looking and we're saying, God, can I do it one more year? Can I do it one more time? Can I make it through another year? What all is this year going to throw at me? What am I going to have to face this year? I mean, I had a tough year last year. Some of you had hard years. You had difficult years. And this next year, you look and you wonder, wow, how are we going to face this year? What will my life consist of in 2015? What will fill my moments, what will I fill my time with? Where will my efforts go? And what direction do I take? And I'm wondering if that's really the question we should be asking. Maybe the question we should be asking is, who is going to fill our next year? President Reagan, when he was a little boy, this was back in the day where you would go to the cobbler and he would make you a pair of shoes. And so his parents wanted to get him a pair of shoes, but they had square-toed shoes and round-toed shoes. And so when he went to the place, the guy said, well, do you want square-toed or round-toed shoes? He said, well, I don't know. I haven't really made up my mind yet. So a week later, he ran into the cobbler again. He ran into and he goes, son, have you made up your mind? Do you want round-toed shoes or square-toed? And he said, well, I don't know. I'm having trouble making up my mind. He said, well, your shoes will be ready tomorrow. So when then, not President Reagan, but just a young Reagan, went with his parents to pick up the shoes, when he walked in, the cobbler set the shoes up on the counter, and there was one round-toed and one square-toed. And if you had gone to President Reagan's Oval Office, on display, he had a pair of shoes, round-toed and square-toed. Because he said, I learned a very important lesson. You don't make decisions, someone will make them for you. If you don't decide with your life, if you don't fill your life with God, if you don't allow God to call the shots, something or someone else will. Your circumstances, your situations, people, family, struggles, whatever, it will determine who you are. It will determine what you do. It will determine how you live your life if you don't allow God to determine and to call the shots in your life. So I guess the real question is, who's going to be in charge of 2015 in my life? Because it's really not a question of what, it's a question of who. Because if we get the who right, the what is going to take care of itself. But if we don't get the who right, then the what can cause all kinds of problems. It can devastate us, struggling with the what, because we're not submitted to the who. Now, Brian Jarrett is senior pastor of a great church in North Place Church in Texas. He wrote a book named Extravagant. I recommend it. It's a challenging book. I'll tell you some of the things that he shared that God led him to do. He was a young man who grew up in a home where his father and mother's relationship was dysfunctional. The father was always leaving and coming back and everything, so he wound up having to live with his grandparents, and they were good, godly people, the old holiness kind of folks, you know. Holiness kind of, you know, a lot of rules, a lot strict, everything else. And so as a young man, he tried to kind of throw that off and wound up becoming an alcoholic at a very young age. Finally, though, God touched his life and he gave his heart and life to the Lord, and he became a quite successful evangelist, even at a very early age. And he was, as a matter of fact, he's had revivals here in this area, in Clinton. In his book, he shares, he said, as he was on his way to his next revival services in Clinton, Mississippi, he got a phone call, and this guy goes, you know, I'm leaving the church here in Pine Bluff, Arkansas, and I said I was going to bring a name to the board meeting, and each of the board members should bring a name to the board meeting, and we will put those names on the table. And he said, Brian, everybody had the same name. It's yours. And maybe this is a God thing you need to pray about. And he says, you know, I told him, all right, I'll pray about it all. And then under my breath, I thought, then I'll call you back later and say no. Because, you know, everything was going good. And, I mean, and he talks about his struggles over the next few weeks as he prayed, and God spoke to him, and he's like, oh, no, I'm going there. You know, a little town in the middle of nowhere. Y'all know where Pine Bluff, Arkansas is? I mean, you know, it's this a bustling center of activity and just a metropolis of outstanding. No. Pine Bluff is one of those things you try to get around on your way somewhere else, and not to insult Pine Bluff if anybody's watching from Pine Bluff or you're from Pine Bluff. It's just not one of those towns that, you know, that's my destination. That's where we're going on vacation, is Pine Bluff. And not the place. And so God led him there. And then as he was there, when he got there, he found out that the former pastor, after he was gone, then the contractor ran off with the money, didn't pay the subcontractor, so the church owed for stuff they'd already paid for. So the church was in debt. It was a mess, and it was a fiasco and debt and everything else. And he thought, man, what kind of a mess have I gotten myself into? Or, God, you've gotten me into. And then God led him to do something extravagant. He came to the church. He said, we've got to pay this debt off if we're ever going to be able to accomplish anything, because we're staggering under it. He said, so my wife and I have prayed about, God has spoken in. There's a whole process he goes through. He says, I'm not going to take a salary for the next year. No salary. And he said, and don't get me wrong, I had no savings. I had no bank. I had nothing to fall back on. But my wife and I decided we could sell most of our furniture, sell our cars, get cheaper cars, sell our house, you know, do everything. And somehow we'd figure out we're going to do our best to survive. And then there was a process of miracles where God took care of him, he and his wife and his family during that year. And in 11 months, the church had paid off all of the debt. And because God, through his extravagance, inspired others to be extravagant, and all the testimony of that. And so after this experience of living a year by faith and in a mobile home, and you know, because it was the cheapest way he could live and whatever, and God provided and even gave him an incredible gift of his wife. He had always wanted to buy her a real wedding ring, and he couldn't ever find the place or the time or the resources. And a guy came in and he said, look, you know, I know what you're doing. Here's this ring. It's about a $15,000 ring. I want you to buy it. I'm going to sell it to you for my cost, which is half that. And he said, but I can't do it. I don't even have a salary right now. He says, I know. It's okay, even if it's $10 a month. So the guy wrote up a contract. Said, you can pay me whatever you're able to pay, even if that's just like $10 a month or even nothing if you don't have it. Just ever when you can, just ever how you can, just pay for it. And he prayed about it. Finally, he felt, and he goes out, but I just feel so bad. He said, don't worry about it. It's not a problem. And so he signs the contract. He gives him the ring. And then the guy looks at him and says, now you are in debt to us $7,500. He says, now that you're in debt to us $7,500, I have the ability to do this. He takes the contract, tears it up, and he says, I've just forgiven the debt. He said, there's nothing you can do about it, because he wouldn't let him give it to him. He said, but now you sign a contract, and I can forgive the debt. So he tore up the contract, threw it in the trash. He said, go give that ring to your wife and let God bless you. Now that's with no salary. And on he told of how God provided for them. People in the community heard what he was doing and how God. And so after this year, the church is moving forward on some property and some other things, and they're moving. He feels the need to just get along with God, so he tells his church, I'm going to fast for 40 days. And that's not an easy task. I've done that. And so he's out there around day 35, 36, and there's a man that he knows that has this cabin, a remote cabin. And so he wants to go spend the last couple of days. He's gotten to the point that he's too weak to really go into the office or anything. And so he goes to spend the last couple of days of his fast out in the cabin. And he's there by himself. And he's mad. He said, now I had all kinds of wonderful experiences with God during this 36, 37 days I was getting down the last couple of days. I'd had wonderful experiences in God, but I hadn't got what I was after. What I was after was some answers. I wanted to know what God had planned, what he wanted me to do, what he wanted me to accomplish next, and everything else, and I wasn't hearing anything. So he got mad. And he kind of threw a fit with God there in that cabin. So much so that he even kicked over the coffee table and kind of in a rage at God. Just, I don't understand. I'm hungry. I'm tired. I'm wore out. I'm not hearing anything. What is it? I want an answer. And so he exerted himself, and he's really exhausted and spent. So he lays down, he falls asleep. When he wakes up, there's this big old burly dude standing over him, looking at him. And he kind of freaks out and goes, it's okay, it's okay. And he noticed that the guy's hands were really rough and just, grease-stained, and the guy's name was Dale. He goes, look, I don't mean you any harm. He said, but look, about 3 hours ago, God gave me a divine word. A life-changing, a life and death word for a pastor. I've called every pastor I know, everybody I know, and finally I just got out and said, God, I don't know. I know you've given me this word, and I know that you mean for me to give it to somebody, but I have no earthly idea who I'm supposed to give it to. And I'm driving down the road, and the Holy Spirit said, go down this road. He said, you got to understand, there's nothing down this road except this cabin. So this guy's driving out through the woods on this whole road, and he sees this cabin with one car at it, and he pulls up to it, and walks inside, and Brian is laying there on the couch, and he comes, and he's standing over him, and he wakes up, he says, so are you a man of God? He goes, actually, I'm a pastor of a church about an hour from here, and I've been on a 40-day fast. I'm about like day 37 right now and wanting a word from the Lord. Well, I got it. And he's like, who are you, young man? But he turns around, and the guy stands the little coffee table back up, sits down on it, reaches and takes both of his hands and looks straight in his eyes, and he said, for 40 minutes, he poured out to me God's word to me. And he said he answered every question that I had asked God during those 37 days. And then he got down to the end of his time. He began to share with him. And he said, Brian, you're unhappy in the ministry because you've taken your attention off Jesus and his promises. While you're focused on strategies and effectiveness, your heart is divided and you're missing the point. And Jesus is the point. If you'll engage him with as much passion and effort as you poured into your ministry for him, all those other things will flow out of your relationship with him. He said, as this man began to pour into me, he said, suddenly I began to realize something. I had been fasting for answers, not for God. I wanted answers from God, but I wasn't fasting for God. I wasn't fasting for His presence. I wasn't fasting for communion with Him. He said, and suddenly all of these passages began to roll through my mind. As Paul said, I've learned this one thing: there's nothing more important than knowing Him. Now, Paul, who probably accomplished more for the kingdom of God than any other man in history, he accomplished more than Jesus did. No, wait a minute. He did it through the power of Jesus Christ, and Paul said, everything I do is by Christ and all. But Jesus had a handful of followers, winds up getting crucified on a cross and everything else. But he then empowered Paul, who evangelized the world, established churches in many leading, and created, helped to create the church that you and I know today, shaped the world for Christ. And Paul said, my agenda isn't the important thing. My important thing is knowing Him. Knowing Him. Really knowing, that word knowing as an experiencing relationship with, that I might know Him in the power of in the fellowship of His suffering and in the power of His resurrection. And he said, and suddenly all of these passages began to pour over me. And he said, I realized I was very weary and heavy laden by the worries and responsibilities of making life work. Guys, life's not easy. It's not. You know, I was raised all my life. My dad always said, life ain't easy, son. It's not. It's never going to be. There's going to be problems. There's going to be difficulties. There's going to be heartaches. There's going to be struggles. There's no free lunch. There's no free ride. It's going to be a battle. It's going to be a struggle. Get used to it. You might as well learn to work. You're going to have to do it the rest of your life. And he believed in that, the work part. And he said, but that's life, son. That's what it is. Don't expect anything any differently. He said, but I become weary just making life work. But now, he said, suddenly I felt this incredible relaxation in trusting God and watching Him work more powerful than ever. His attention then shifted from responsibilities to trusting God to work in His way and in His timing. And he said, and my soul was freed from an oppressive burden. He found pure, unbridled, uncomplicated, and passionate worship. You know, as Lynette is our worship leader, and one thing that I know that she does is she seeks to find music and plan a service that worships God. And yes, it may have themes and it may have stuff, and she's led of the Holy Spirit, but I do know this, and I know her intimately and personally, and I know that she seeks to lead us to a point of worshiping God. It's not about bringing any particular emotional response or trying to create something or make something happen. It's just simply, how can we worship you? How can we make this flow into worship to you? And that you being the objective. And one of the things that we've talked about many times, you know, it's getting hard sometimes to find songs that sing to God rather than about God. We need to sing to God, people. We need to worship God. We don't need to talk about God. We need to talk to God. We need to commune with God. We need to know God. We don't just need to know Bible facts and information. We need to know the God of the Bible. We need to know the power of the Word. You can know the Word and have no power. You know, there are people who have a form of godliness but deny the power thereof. They know the Word, they know doctrine, and sometimes Sunday school can just be a matter of an exercise in trivia. What new little tidbit of information can we gather? It's not really going to affect my life, but it's interesting. It's not about trivial pursuit. This life is not trivial. The kingdom is not trivial. It's not just pursuit of data. This is about a relationship with God. And so he said, suddenly I found myself, my worship was uncomplicated. Why? Because I got rid of the agenda. You know, as a pastor, I really struggle with this, but I do my best that when I'm here And it's different when you're here looking at these mugs than y'all looking at us, because we're worship leaders, and we try to tell the choir, smile a little bit, lead. Look, I don't want to go where some of you folks are leading. From what I see from up here, I don't want to go there. Now there's others that I look at and I go, man, now they're worshiping God. I want to go there. There's some others I go, I don't know where they are. I don't even want to know. From the looks on your faces. And surprisingly, sometimes you never know. I remember one day I had preached a sermon. I was so excited. I felt that it was really, anointed of God. And there was this guy in our church that had a tendency to be rather opinionated. It was another church. And after the service, he made a beeline for me. And he was coming down the aisle, with one of those walks. And you're like, oh, boy. And he walked straight for me, right up, right close, walked straight to me. He goes, wow. Now that really touched my heart. I'm like, oh, whoa, shoo. I didn't know what I'd done. I thought, boy, this guy's coming for me. He's got both barrels loaded. I'm fixing to get it. I don't know what I did, but I stepped in it big time, And sometimes you can look at people and it looks like they got this frown and scowl on their face, but really what's happening is God is really deeply doing a work inside of them, and they're really thinking. And sometimes they're worried about something that has nothing to do with what you're saying. So I've learned I can't really judge by what's on people's faces. But some of y'all, I got a general idea. You're not engaged in the worship. Anyway. He lost the agenda. If we could just come to church without an agenda. It's hard, folks. I know it is. I as a pastor just try to get up here and just worship the Lord. I had someone here not too long ago that came to the service and said, I really enjoyed seeing the fact that you're just involved in the worship, because most places I go, the pastor just sort of sits there, and then when it's his time to do his thing, he gets up and does his thing. But you seem to actually be involved in the worship. And I said, well, yeah. That's what I'm here for. I'm here to worship God. Yeah, I'm here to preach, but that's after that. I'm here first to worship. Then we'll get to that preaching stuff. And I know I've got my mind on what I'm about to say and everything else, and I get distracted and all. And then when you're here and you're looking out there and you're seeing what is or isn't happening, sometimes, as a worship team, as worship leaders, we're looking and going, oh boy, wherever it was we were meaning to go, they ain't going. And you kind of see the posture, you see the attitude, you see the spirit. I don't know where you're intending to take us, but I ain't going. And it's kind of hard to overcome sometimes. So you just train the worship team. If you see one of them, don't look at them. Find somebody else to look at, because if you keep looking at them, you're just going to kind of go, I'm going to put this down and go do something else. And so you're sitting here, and pretty soon you're looking around going, oh, I'm kind of worried about this service. The pastor just ain't happening. The worship team is not going. And pretty soon you're looking around even and going, oh, wow, this is bad. This is really not turning. And you lost all focus. Why? You got your agenda going. Hey, this service isn't going where it needs to go. People aren't really reacting. And when you're up here looking, it can just overwhelm you. Here's what I want us to do. Let's just get rid of the agenda and focus on Him. Okay, just focus on worshiping Him. Focus on praising Him. And put our agendas aside, because that's what we're here for. To praise and to worship Him, and then to hear from His Word and to see what God would say to us. And this was the last words, kind of the wrap-up, as he looked at Pastor Brian. This guy's name was Dale. And he looks at Pastor Brian and he goes, look, make short plans. Your future has already been decided. He said, it was incredibly liberating. You see, the problem is we have been taught, you got your short-range plans, you got your middle-range plans, you got the long-range plans, you got to get everything, situated. And organized, and you got to have those long-term objectives where you're headed, and you know where you're going, and you know how you're going to get there, and you got to keep on track, and you got to stay focused, and you got to have goals and objectives and all. And in business and a lot of other things, that's okay. But when it comes to spiritual matters, sometimes we get so bogged down in that we lose sight of God because we're so focused on the objective. And He's one of those people that's very organized and structured and, objective-minded and everything else. And He says, I suddenly felt this breath of fresh air in that God doesn't expect me to make the long-range plans. That's His job. And I am learning more and more how to walk in this. And it's uncomfortable, but a little bit liberating. Have you ever wondered why some people are homeless and why they seem to not be concerned about the fact that they're homeless? I mean, I have dealt with homeless people for a long time. I've been in the ministry about 38 years now, and I've dealt with a lot of homeless people, and there's some of them go, hey, don't worry about me, I'm right where I want to be. How could you possibly want to be there? Y'all worry about all that stuff. I don't want to worry about anything. I would be worried if I have no place to sleep. I don't have anything to eat. I don't have any money. That would worry me. But there are people who have learned to not worry about that. And they just live their life from day to day. They kind of go through their routine. Now, there are other homeless people out there who've got it down to a system, and they're worried. Don't you get them mess up their schedule? There's all kinds of people that are out there. But if we can get to a place where we just allow God to be God, and what God does sometimes is He takes us to a place where we don't have any choice. Now, folks, some of you, God has been doing some stuff in your life, and you just need to wake up and smell the roses and catch what's going on in your life. God will take you to places where you don't know what in the world to do. He will stretch you, He will take you, He will twist you and turn you and spin you around and get you totally lost where you have no idea where you are. And He says, now follow me. Where are we going? You're still into that, ain't you? Just follow my footprints. And folks, I know that it goes so against our nature. Now, for some of you, okay, that's cool. I mean, there's some of you folks who plan, strategy. What are you talking about? Long-range plans? I don't know. Today. And then for some of you, and you know what I found? Those kind of people are really, they're free to worship God. Man, they'll worship, they'll praise. And some of you, I'm going to read your mail. Some of you have been in a car driving home and go, have you ever noticed so-and-so? They are clueless. Okay, now they're up there, they're just worshiping God, they're just praising God and all, and I know their life is a wreck and a mess. They're clueless. They don't even understand they're in a mess. They're just worshiping God, praising God, and I'm going, man, they just need to wake up and smell the roses to see what reality is. Maybe they're in the happy place. Maybe they're the Mary that's sitting at the feet of Jesus while Martha is freaking out over dinner. Maybe they're right where they should be. You just don't know what's going on. You don't see the plan. You see, with God, He just says, hey, follow the footprints. And over these last couple of years, some people say, well, how have you done this? I said, there's one. I just look for a footprint and step in it. Look for another footprint and step in it. Look for another footprint and step in it. And I've just sort of kind of, now, you got to understand, this goes against my nature, but there's somebody else that it really goes against their nature way more than it does mine, and that's my wife. But anyway, my wife is a planner. And she's, look, I don't know what I'd have done without my wife because she helps me stay focused at times, but at the same time, we can get so stressed. Let me give you an example. Dave calls and he goes, Pastor, man, I don't know what we're going to do. We got to have some shelving because we're going to have to build this and get some shelving and all because we got to store up these products because we got to get ahead and everything else. I said, okay, let's pray about it. We'll figure out. God, something will happen, whatever. And he just talked to me, and like a day or two later, I get a call. Hey, man, I got a whole warehouse full of shelving, and I got to get rid of it. And I don't have any place to put it. And look, y'all want it? Yeah, okay. That's Sheldon. How much? Bunch. Warehouse. Whole big trailer load of it. Really? Yeah, okay. I get a call yesterday. Chris calls me. Pastor, both ice machines are out. I mean, we've gimp-legged along and all, and I wasn't aware that they were having problems. That one of them's not dumping ice, the other one's just quit working altogether. We're out of ice. We've got a lot of people. We use a lot of ice. We're going to have an ice maker. And I said, okay, let's pray about it. We'll worry about that Monday. Can y'all make it through the weekend? We'll make it through the weekend. Okay. I'm not even going to worry yet. Why? God's in charge. I went back to doing my stuff. A little bit later, my phone, which I didn't realize was in my back pocket, it was actually on and dinged a while ago, but anyway, I turned it silent. All of a sudden, I'm working at the house. I've been trying to finish up our kitchen during the holidays and everything else, and I hear ding, go over there. Here's a picture of a big commercial ice machine. I have this ice machine. I wish I could donate it, but I can't, but I'll sell it to you for about 1/3 the price of what it was originally. Big commercial stainless steel. Okay. I'll write you the check Sunday. Let them know they'll come pick it up. Done. You know. Now, there again, you look and you say, now, living, and sometimes people will look and you go, you're just clueless. You don't even know that you should be worried at this point. No, I'm just learning that, you know what? God's really got stuff in control. And I don't need to fret and worry about every little detail and everything that's coming along and coming down the pike and everything else. What I do need to do is focus on Him, spend time with Him, you know, and sometimes we can be this about everything. I mean, about everything in our life, about our, you know, we've got to play, we've got to rest, we've got to do this, we've got to that, we've got to, and we're just almost stressed over all this stuff, and I'm just kind of learning to let it go. Now, I've got a little granddaughter, and anytime you say those words, of course, let it go, let it go. I mean, wow, we've heard that a lot. She was so cute. She got a little microphone that plays Let It Go and all, and Lynette came up with the idea to build her this little thing to hang her little princess dresses and everything. It's a changing thing, and it has a mirror at the end and little shelves and everything, and it has Imagine and Make Your Own kind of beautiful and everything. And so built that thing, and they cut it out on the OC router and painted it and decorated and all. She gets this microphone. Of course, she has to have the princess dress on now. She's got to have the gloves on. She's got to have the crown. She's got to have the necklace. She's got all the garb, the ear, you know. She's got earrings, everything else. She's got her microphone. And then I walk around the corner in the kitchen, and she's standing in front of that mirror, and she's got that microphone, and it's playing Let It Go, and she's just like, she's looking in the mirror. And she is just lost in the ecstasy of that moment. What's the lady's name that sings Let It Go? Huh? Yeah, no, I'm talking about in the movie. I don't care about the singer. No, I'm talking about Elsa? Okay, whatever. Anyhow, she is her at that moment, and the world has faded away, and she is lost in the mirror. And then the grandson, who has a hedge trimmer. That's what he wanted. The boy loves lawnmowers and hedge trimmers and chainsaws and everything, so we got him this little John Deere hedge trimmer. And then he comes over, and he's trying to saw the princess with the hedge trimmer. And she's like, you know, I'm in the moment, quit with the chainsaw thing, the hedge trimmer, and he's trying to trim the princess dress with the hedge trimmer. Thank God it's not a real one. We'd have had wounds all over the place. It would have been bad. The furniture would have been chopped up. I mean, it would have been a bad situation. But she's just lost in the moment. But sometimes we do. We just need to let it go. We need to let stuff go. We just hold on to stuff so tightly. We're so bound up in who we are. He later went to a church in Texas. And when he was there, God spoke to him. They had finally gotten the dream house they had always wanted. And they were so excited and all. Then God knocked on the door again. finally, he didn't even want to tell his wife because God had put a vision in his heart, and he came and finally he told her, she said, he wants the house, doesn't he? Yeah. So in the Sunday service, when they announced their fundraising, they signed the deed of their home over to the church. And then that afternoon, the afternoon before, God had even spoken to him another level, and empty your bank accounts and give it all, just give it all. And he's sitting at the table trying to tell his wife, he's sweating, I don't even know what to do. I've already, she's a godly woman, she's an incredible woman, we're giving up our dream house and everything else, and now he wants me to give all the savings account, the checking account, the everything, and whatever. She goes, he wants it all, doesn't he? Give it. Huh? The checking account, the savings, everything, I know the look on your face, just give it all. So they told their family, their little boy comes, and he had found some money. He said, I gave some money to the missionary the other day, and now I found this money in my coat, and it's $10, and I'm just a little boy and all, but I want to, he said, what I do now, I gave $2, and now it's 10 and whatever and all. And his dad told him, and he said, does that include my room too? And his dad goes, well, yeah, the whole house. He goes, oh, okay. Well, I want to give my $10 too. I'm not telling y'all to all do this, okay? But here's a guy who God has used him to just step out and do some extravagant things. And there's more to the story because God blessed him. God gave it back. Sometimes we want to sit and we want to look at Job and we say, how could God possibly allow all that to happen? But did you read the end of the story? At the end of the story, he had twice of what he had before. But he was willing to lose it all. And, I'm just praying, God, that I'll be that person that would just look for the footprints and say, God, you be God. I'm not God. I don't want to be God. I don't need to be God. Y'all don't want me to be God. No one wants me to be God. And God just be God in my life. Some of you have got to just let go. You've got to let go and let God be God in your life. Come, all of you who are weary and heavy laden. I'll give you rest. But here's how you're going to rest. You're going to let go of the reins, and you're going to take on the yoke. Well, that sounds really stressful. No, because then all you have to do is respond to the reins. And when God says, turn here, you turn. When he says, stop, you stop. When he says, go, you go. And when God is in charge, then suddenly you can relax and realize, I'm not in charge anymore. It's up to him. Lord, I thank you this morning for your word. There are some weary Christians here today, and they're weary needlessly because they've wearied themselves. They've wearied themselves. They've struggled and strained at everything and pushed and shoved and struggled. And today they just need to relax and let you be God. And realize that God, in 2015, I'm going to let you be God. Would you stand with me, congregation, this morning? There's a song, it's a new song, and for the younger generation, they understand it. For some of us, it really means nothing except within this song, the words say, God, take me out in those places where I'm not in control. Take me out on the ocean where I'm totally at your mercy. God, stretch me. Take me beyond my understanding and my stuff and take me out into places that only you could lead me. To walk on water I can't do, but with you I can. Are there some people in this place that this has resonated with you and you're a weary Christian? You're looking forward to the new year and you go, I barely made it through last year. I don't even want to start thinking about 2015. Quit thinking about 2015. I want you to put your focus on him. If you're weary and heavy laden, I want you to know that you can come and say, God, here, take these reins. I don't want them anymore. I don't want them. And God, whatever is going to happen in 2015, I'm just going to put it in your hands. And I'm just going to ask you to put the yoke on me. And I'm going to follow you. I'm just going to let you be God. I'm tired of trying to be God. I can't control anything. I can't make anything happen. But God, I know you can. Come, all who are weary.
I'm Lori. Thanks for joining us. Here at Southside, we'd like to help you grow in your relationship with God. For more info and ways to connect, go to our website. From there, you can like us on Facebook and even subscribe to our YouTube channel. If you need prayer, give us a call at the church office or feel free to email us. May God bless you, and we look forward to seeing you soon.